enjoying doing these recordings every week with you, Brian. In fact, I was in Amarillo this week, and somebody came up to me and said, I really enjoy Brian Schrauger on EndTimes.com, and I just watched y'all's recording together this last week, and it's enjoyable to hear what's going on, and I think you give a great perspective. Again, good morning from Texas. I know you're
good afternoon from Israel.
You're enjoying the Israeli life over there, probably full of ups and downs and constant, sirens, and you're trying to just live your life. And there's just always news headlines. At least over here, it looks like there's always news headlines keeping you on your toes. So hopefully all's well right now.
It is, but you're right. There's an atmosphere here that is very intense, and it's been that way, especially since October 7. So October 7 created or started a cultural atmosphere here that is pervasive. Even though we don't see rockets here in Jerusalem like they see them up north, there is an ongoing awareness that things could erupt very, very badly at any time, especially since, April 13, when Iran launched hundreds of missiles and rockets and drones at Israel, and they appeared right over Jerusalem. So we are aware this can happen here.
It can happen at any time, I know. And this week, I guess the major news headlines, and you sent me a bunch of articles, kind of explain what happened earlier this week, and it was a preemptive attack, and kind of what, practically speaking, that meant for your world, but also just the Israelis there.
Well, what is beginning to come out right now is that what Israel accomplished is even more significant than perhaps we are still aware. One news report I saw today indicated that Hezbollah is still in shock at the ability Israel had on Sunday, the 25th, to strike so many of its launch sites, hitting thousands of its launchers. I mean, what good are rockets if you can't launch them? So launchers were hit, not only launchers that were ready to fire on Sunday, but also launchers that would be used in any future attack on Israel. And what Israel sent in was like 100 jets, helicopters, and it hit all of these targets in a matter of minutes. A very, very short period of time, these things were completely taken out. There was an immense amount of planning that went into this over months. It happened prior to this for many, many months. The IDF was gathering intelligence about these various launch sites and launchers, and partly we know in part they gathered intelligence, I think, by satellite and by drones flying over areas where Hezbollah has been aggressively launching targets or rockets into Israel. But apparently they knew about other launch sites too. So, and they did all this. They took out so much of Hezbollah's ability to attack. They did it without killing a single civilian. There were some terrorists that were apparently killed, like 6 or 7, we were told by the IDF, but no civilians were taken out. So they can't use any kind of rhetoric like, oh, Israel's trying to kill us and commit another genocide like they've been doing, allegedly, like their rhetoric is like they've been doing in Gaza. So, yeah, it's actually, it's very, very significant. It's huge. And as you know from my report yesterday, I'm convinced that this is evidence of God's hand protecting Israel. He prevented a major attack. It looks like what Hezbollah intended to do was launch a bunch of rockets into northern Israel, get Israel focused on intercepting or dealing with them, and then while they were doing that, they wanted to send some missiles down to Tel Aviv. Because the idea, their doctrine has been, you hit us in Beirut, which they did when they killed Schrauger, their second number 2 man in Hezbollah on July 30. So you hit us in Beirut, we'll hit you in Tel Aviv. Well, obviously
That's a long way for a rocket to go, though. I mean, how they?
they've got the Hezbollah. Hezbollah is better armed than most nations. Has more arms, and they have long-range, sophisticated missiles. They have, of course, thousands of these short-range Katyusha rockets, but they also have very high, sophisticated missiles that can reach all the way down to Eilat. So they can go all the way. They can cover the whole of Israel.
But with Israel's technology, they would be able to take care of those, I would think, a little bit easier if the travel time is there. With Iron Dome and those sorts of technologies, I would think that would be difficult for them to get a rocket blast into Tel Aviv.
But we're also talking about supersonic speeds. Unlike rockets or drones, which travel very slowly, these missiles could be in Tel Aviv and Eilat in a matter of minutes.
Hey, I invited Jimmy Evans to be on this morning with us. He's live.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
Great. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you, too.
So we're talking about some of the proactive Hezbollah attacks this week. Also talking about just Brian's perspective on what's happening there. And Brian sent me some news articles, but Dad, we're talking about sort of what's happening on the ground in Israel. Do you have any commentary on the attacks this week?
Well, I read an article yesterday, Brian, that said that the only good thing about this volley that's taking place between Israel and Hezbollah is it's mitigating Hezbollah's ability to launch a full-scale war later on. And so, Iran, and I read an article last week about why Iran is delaying, and a couple of reasons there. And one is the World Bank told them if they did it, it would break their economy.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other thing is the United States told them effectively, if you attack Israel, we'll destroy your economy.
Exactly.
Not a military threat, it's an economic threat. And
yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's going to happen at some point. I mean, At some point there's going to be all out war, but it's a good thing. And you were talking about if there was a all out barrage, that may be Hezbollah's next move is just to fire everything they have and hope something hits.
Well, I think they would only do that. I'm certain they would only do that if Tehran said, do it, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you're right. Those are the two things you mentioned, the World Bank warning Iran, and then the presence of this vast coalition of military forces that showed up in the waters of the Middle East, and with potential targets on Karg Island, which imports and exports like 90% of Iran's oil, most of which, by the way, is going to China.
Yeah.
So if we hit that, and we could, it looks like it would be an easy target. There would be a ramification with China, because China needs oil, right? And so that's not something Israel's going to do lightly. The other real vulnerable spot are these ports in Bandar Abbas on the Gulf of Hormuz, and we hit those and we take out their ability to import-export most of what they import-export throughout the world. So yeah, we can destroy their economy in a very short period of time. And if their economies are destroyed, arguably, apparently, it would be very difficult for them to survive as a government.
That's right.
A lot of the Iranian people despise.
That's right.
And so, in fact, as we think about prayer points, we need to be in prayer for the people of Iran, the citizens of Iran, because our conflict, Israel's conflict, is not with them; it's with their government.
That's right.
And the people of Iran there are whole swaths of them that are really, really remarkable people, and they are living under incredible oppression.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I'm sure you're aware of this, Jimmy, that there are for many years, there have been reports of huge numbers of people coming to faith in Yeshua.
Yep.
And they've had visions. A lot of them have had visions unlike we hear about, because that's how the gospel's gotten to them. It's been a few years ago, but there's an organization based here in Israel that has done a lot of covert evangelical work in Iran and Iraq. They go into Iraq and then they sneak into Iran, which is quite a story. But they reported a few years ago that the church is growing fastest in Iran, or faster in Iran than any other country in the world. So, yes, again, we often talk, and you'll hear me talk about Iran as our enemy, but it's the Iranian government. It's the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's these imams. So we need to be in prayer for the people of Iran, too.
Yeah, we have Dr. Hormuz Shariat on the show, and they call him the Billy Graham of Iran. And he's actually here in Texas. He does what he does, through television, through satellite television, because Iran controls the internet, but they don't control satellite television.
Right.
And so they're able to, and then they're just so many people, just like the greatest revival in the world's happening in Iran.
Yeah.
And they hate their government. What Hormuz Shariat says, they're Persians. They're not Arabs.
Exactly.
And Islam is against their culture.
Right.
When you read the book of Daniel, when you read the book of Esther, when you read different books in the Bible, they're Persians, and they're very noble people.
Yeah.
And so they would expel their government in a heartbeat. They tried to during the Obama administration, but the Obama administration wouldn't give them any help.
Right.
So let me talk just a minute, because you're talking about China. See, in Revelation, it says the kings of the East come to join the Battle of Armageddon. And then in Ezekiel 38:39, it talks about Gog and Magog, who I believe is Russia, coming as a part of the Gog and Magog alliance, along with Iran, Turkey, some other countries, and invade Israel. Well, there's a very practical aspect to all of this. So you're talking about oil, okay? And so it's a massive issue. Oil is a massive, and China has a massive oil problem. If something happens to Iran and Saudi Arabia and those countries, they don't have oil. Like Russia has oil. The United States has all the oil we'll ever need. But Israel has 31 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. And so when it says in Ezekiel 38 that they come to take spoil, for many years, people would say, why on earth would they take the trouble to come down and try to take Israel? Of course, from the Islamic perspective, they want the land. Russia wants the natural gas. And the kings of the East, when they come, they're also coming to protect their energy assets, plus maybe some political issues, but mainly it's about energy assets. And so that area of the world controls the world's energy by and large. And Israel now is a player, and now they're building that East Med pipeline where they're going to all about this, where they're exporting oil now to Europe, where they become a direct competitor with Vladimir Putin. So it's the geopolitical landscape of today exactly matches the Bible. And when you say, why would all these people invade? Well, a lot of it's economic. There's
another factor that goes along with that right now, and that is, for a number of years, China has been pursuing what's called its Belt and Road Initiative. You've heard of this, yes? The Belt and Road is something we need to talk about this sometime, or do a report on it, because China is attempting, and is to a large degree succeeding in reinstituting the belt by which it shipped goods to the West, which is the water belt, okay? Shipping that way. And the road way, it's called the Silk Road. You can find this in history. And they're trying to bring back the Silk Road, which goes through, I think, Turkmenistan, over to up to Russia, and it crosses over down into Iran, and then it goes, of course, into Iraq, and it wants to go into Syria, and then from Syria it has access to the Mediterranean. Right. And it has been aggressively pursuing this for a number of years. This is its primary motivation. China is not a very strong economy. They have a lot of debt, but they also have a lot of people who have become, and countries who've become indebted to them, because they're going into countries in Africa and elsewhere around third world countries. They will build your dams, we'll build your railway systems, we'll build the buildings you need, and you can pay us back later. Well, these countries can't, and they become basically debt slaves to China, and China gains a kind of de facto sovereignty over those countries, where it wants to develop its belt and road. So it is about oil, but it's not just about oil. It's about the whole economy of China. I have one of my sons. I'm really proud of him right now. My youngest son, his name is Jonathan, just arrived about a week ago in Chongqing, China.
Oh, wow.
I never heard of Chongqing, but I looked it up when I found out he got a job there. He's teaching English at an international school in Chongqing. Chongqing is a city of like 30 million people.
Oh, gosh.
It's huge. It's humongous. And it's mind-blowing. Well, he's there right now, and I'm talking to him on WhatsApp almost every other day. And the high-tech things they have there are just mind-blowing. They're in terms of the smart everything. Everything is, of course, they have facial scans and all of this, but nobody pays cash. It's pretty much a cashless society.
Wow.
And they have a high-speed rail system going from where he lives into downtown Chongqing. Everything is really, really, really modern. I'm hopeful next year I'll have a chance to go and visit him there. I think it'd be very, very interesting.
Well, they make everything over there.
They make it all. They make iPhones. They make computers. They make chips. And they are very much attempting to corner the market on all these things. Yeah.
They're players in the end times, that's for sure. But they have a very, very fragile economy. And they also have a demographic crisis in that they have an older population because of their one-child policy. And they have a heavily male population because of their one-child policy. So they've got a demographic crisis going on there. Brent, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I do. So just shifting gears a little bit, Brian sent me some news articles this morning. One of them I thought was interesting. The South African chief Rabbi Warren Goldstein criticized Pope Francis and Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, for failing to protect Western and biblical values and for abandoning Israel. When you talk about end times and you talk about Bible prophecy, I think there's, the Antichrist, and there's also some spiritual, I wouldn't say villains, but there's people in the last days that are going to support the Antichrist by carrying this deception. And I think there's always this wave of how does the Pope play into some of that, And when you have the rabbi in South Africa calling out Pope Francis saying, "You've abandoned Israel," do y'all have any commentary on what the Catholic Church, what the Vatican should do in these moments and in these times to support Israel, and or if they're not, what does that mean?
I'll let Brian go first.
Well, I'll
softballs this morning, boys.
I'll speak to the prophecy side of it. I'll leave that to you, Jimmy. That's your thing, and you're much better at it. I would like to point out, however, that one of the people that he was rebuking, even more so, at least in the news report I saw, was Justin Welby, the head of the Anglican Church in England. Now, Welby came into that role as a kind of a surprise. It surprised me when he became the Archbishop 10 years ago or so. It's 10 years or so ago. And because he is largely evangelical. And the Anglican Church is not. And the Anglican Church is a lot of it's very, very liberal. Think liberal Protestantism.
Right.
So it's very disappointing to see him come out against Israel and what he said recently, calling on Israel to comply with the International Criminal Court, which has condemned Israel and wants to is attempting, at least the prosecutor is still attempting to get warrants for the arrest of certain people in Israel, like Netanyahu and some of the ministers and some of the generals of the IDF. And he's saying, he's bought into the Palestinian narrative. Why? This is very interesting. There's a guy here in Bethlehem, Munther Isaac. Munther Isaac is the pastor of the Lutheran Christmas Church, Bethlehem Church. He's also the organizer and the head of an anti-Israel evangelicalized, they make it sound evangelical, conference against Israel called Christ at the Checkpoint. Until this last year, I had gone to almost every one of them. I just got tired of it. I'm glad to see other people have stepped in to deal with these people. But Munther Isaac gained a lot of notoriety over Christmas when he put up a creche in his church a creche of the baby Jesus in a pile of rubble in Gaza.
Okay? Wow.
And this gained him attention literally around the world. And he's still moving around the world. He's been in Washington, D.C. He's all over the United States. He is in Europe, and he's been to England. In fact, he had, I don't know how long ago this was, a few months ago, Justin Welby turned him down for an appointment. He wanted to go see Justin Welby. Well, this hit the press, and then Justin Welby folded and apologized. And Mumford Isaac came and made his argument to Justin Welby, which is a very anti-Israel argument. And I think he was very much influenced by that. So anyway, this rabbi, I love that. He said, what do you say? He said, does Welby actually believe in the Bible?
Yeah, there you go.
You know, it's like, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, he hits the nail on the head. Don't you believe the Bible? How are you saying these things against Israel? When the Bible says all that it says about the land and about the promises of God to the people of Israel and where he's taking it in the future. So anyway, that's, in terms of the prophetic significance, I'll leave that with you, Jimmy.
Well, and I love your comments. It's amazing because it really is. A lot of churches today, why would you have a lot of the views that you have, these liberal churches? Just throw the Bible away and become a club so that you don't have to, be embarrassed all the time by how much you're violating the book that you say you represent. So let me talk about Bible prophecy for just a minute related to the Roman Catholics. And this is not necessarily toward the Church of England or, the others that we're talking about. And in the Anglican Church, in Revelation 17 is the judgment against religious Babylon. Revelation 18 is a judgment against financial Babylon. And so you say, well, who is Babylon? There's a harlot there in Revelation 17. And who's the harlot? And it says the Antichrist is riding the harlot. And she sits on the city of seven hills. And it talks about red and purple and all these colors that are associated with the Roman Catholic Church. Right. Well, there's a book called A Woman Rides the Beast by Dave Hunt. And it's about that thick. Yeah. And he documents in his book the persecution of the Catholic Church for Protestant Christianity through the ages. And in Israel, just, their position. And I'm not saying the Pope is the Antichrist or the false prophet. And I'm not saying that the Roman Catholic Church is all that. There's a case to be made, though. Because of their treatment of Protestant Christianity through the ages, and Israel. And, the Pope hasn't come out against Israel that I know of. Brian, you may know that he has, but he's tepid. It's just a political position rather than a religious position of, hey, these are our covenant brothers over here, and we have an important role in supporting them and protecting them. That's not what the Catholics have done. And so, I think that regarding Bible prophecy, there was a prophecy by St. Malachi. It was in the 16th century BC. He was a Catholic archbishop, and he traveled to Rome through Europe, and all he saw through Europe was abject poverty until he got to Rome. And then he saw the opulence of Vatican City and the way that the Pope lived, and he had a vision. Now, this is, extra biblical, so we don't give it, the same credit we would. But he had a vision of 112 popes. He said, from now until the tribulation, there will be 112 popes. And now this has been widely circulated. All the popes know it. All the popes know where they are in the pecking order. Well, St. Francis right now is number 112. He is, with the resignation of Pope Benedict, that was highly unusual. He became the 112th Pope. And I think, was he 86 years old or something like that?
87 now, yeah, he's old.
80, so, I mean, if he's the Pope during the tribulation, it's going to be here real quick. Yeah, but I think the Roman Catholic Church, I was in a Central American country. The Catholic Church, like we're in America, is tame. And there are believers who are Catholics. You're not doomed to hell because you're Catholic. There are strong believers who are Catholics. You're right. But we're talking about the system. We're talking about the Catholic system. But I was in Central America, and it's not tame. And the Catholics down there are rabidly anti-Protestant. And the people I was with in the Central America, I'm not naming the country, the people I was with, they were afraid for their lives when they became Protestant, and they were disowned by their family and the Catholic Church. Yeah. And so I think that when Dave Hunt, in his book, A Woman Rides the Beast, and he's talking about Revelation 17 and God's judgment, it's very descriptive of the Catholic Church. So I think that they are complicit in a lot of what's happened against Israel. They certainly have not been helpful.
In the Holocaust, too. I mean,
that's right.
They were complicit there. What's interesting to me along these lines, what it provokes in me, in my mind, is the memory, the awareness that the Catholic Church throughout the ages is famous for syncretization.
That's right.
Which means it won quote unquote converts early on in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries. They would go in, they would conquer a pagan nation, and they say, okay, you're worshiping Ashtoreth or some goddess. Well, fine, just pray now to Mary. And so they brought in these idolatrous worship. You've been praying to saints, and you've been praying to your gods. Well, pray to the saints, Yeah. And there has been all kinds of corruption in sound doctrine that's come in through syncretization. I witnessed this firsthand happening today in, 2014, I think it was. The Pope came to Bethlehem and also later to Israel. And when he came to Manger Square was surrounded, they put up special paintings, and they were like classical paintings, all having to do with the suffering of the Christ from very famous artists. But what they did is they would split the painting down the middle, and they would blend it with suffering of the Palestinians.
Oh, wow.
And so what they did, they syncretized, they merged the suffering of Jesus, and they portrayed it as the suffering of the Palestinians.
Yeah.
Well, the Pope came in. The Pope knows history. He's a very, very, very brilliant man. He came in, said nothing. He conducted a mass in Manger Square. And I actually wrote a commentary, an op-ed piece about his visit in the Jerusalem Post. And in a matter of 4, 5, 6 weeks, the Palestinian Authority police came knocking on the door of the hotel where I was staying. And they said, oh, we need to see you. We need to talk to you. And I said, well, sit down in the lobby and talk. No, you got to come into police headquarters. And so they put me in the back seat of an unmarked car, and they drove me to their police compound in Bethlehem, which used to be an Israeli Jewish police quarters, but now it's Palestinian. And as we walked up the steps, my interrogator, who spoke English, said, you're here because of the things you write.
Wow.
So they had been studying, I think, for a while, what I had published in the Jerusalem Post, especially this article about the Pope's visit. So they took me in, and it was like being in a Humphrey Bogart movie. There was a guy behind a desk and blackened teeth from too much tobacco and smoking away, and he asked me if I spoke Arabic. I could at least knew what he was asking. I said, no, I don't. So anyway, they put me in another room, took my phone away from me, put me in another room, and came back, and they said, you're very one-sided in the things you write. I said, well, what I wrote was an op-ed. It's an opinion piece. It's supposed to have an opinion. If you want to have another opinion, write another opinion. Fine. They just didn't like it, and they said there are a lot of people here complaining about you, and that really surprised me. At the time I was living at a hotel in Bethlehem, okay, and I said, really? I kept a low profile. I liked the people. I was interacting well with them, and I said, who? And my interrogator told me. And you know what? It wasn't Islamic extremists who complained about me. It was my fellow Christians at Christ at the Checkpoint.
Wow.
He told me, Christ at the Checkpoint people, both locally and internationally, complained about. So these people who say they're all for peace and they don't want violence were more than happy to turn me over and have my life implicitly threatened.
Yeah.
And there's a ruthlessness here. So the syncretization, what syncretization does, coming around the barn, is it creates a narrative that allows or sanctifies bad behavior. Right? At the very best, we can say bad behavior. In this case, that bad behavior was they became justified because of all of this narrative, this syncretized narrative, to turn me over to the Palestinian Authority. Now, thank God it turned out okay, right? I ended up leaving Bethlehem that day and thinking I'd never be back, but I've been back now many, many times. And so, I mean, and by the way, you can see an article I wrote about this. And one thing I did is one thing my interrogator said to me when I was in this room, he said, "Oh, now you have something else to write about." That's true, I do. And so I did, right? And I wrote about it. And so there's an op-ed about what happened to me in the Jerusalem Post from, I think, 2014.
The pen is mightier than the sword.
And Bethlehem's under the control of the Palestinians. Very
much. Bethlehem is in what is called Area A. Under the Oslo Accords, what we are called the Palestinian territories, Judea and Samaria, were divided up into three parts. Area C is under the sovereign control of Israel. It's in the Judea and Samaria, but it's under the control of Israel. Area B is very small. It's usually like a buffer zone with A. Area B is under the joint control of the Palestinian Authority and Israel. Area A is under the exclusive administration, at least civil administration, of the Palestinian Authority, not military. Israel can come in militarily anytime.
Right.
And in fact, one blessing that was behind that encounter I just shared with you is that things were heating up here very, very quickly, and I didn't realize how quickly. I don't know if you remember the 3 boys who were kidnapped by terrorists in 2014, and Israel was desperately searching for them. We found out later they'd been killed right away when they were picked up hitchhiking. But the IDF was coming in to Bethlehem every night at 3 a.m, and they were conducting raids on homes in refugee camps. There are 2 of them in Bethlehem. Well, this was just heating things. Things are just heating up very, very quickly. And so God actually, I believe, removed me from that for a time when things were very, very bad. So anyway, all things work together for good.
I want to finish with this just real quickly. I read an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal. It was just talking about how the economic situation in Israel since October 7th has actually been declining. There's a lot of investments and investors that have pulled out of Israel. But the one company they highlighted that was doing really well was El Al Airline. That there was, a no-fly zone, and there's not a lot of, airlines coming in, but their stock has soared. They're doing really well. I don't know if, first of all, tourism has to be a massive, part of the industry there. I'm sure that's kind of shrunk quite a bit. What's the current status, and what does it look like going forward? And Dad, even speaking to, from an American standpoint, when would you feel safe going back over there with everything going on?
I think it's safe to come right now. And you need to be careful where you go, but it's no more dangerous here than it is to go to Chicago, Illinois.
Shout out to Chicago.
I would come to Israel first.
Exactly. I am often in the Palestinian authorities, in Area A, right? Often. I feel safer here than I would in most places in America. In the Palestinian Authority, under their umbrella. Now, I think it's safe to come. You just like going to Chicago, you've got to be aware of what neighborhood you're in. And there are some areas of the country right now best to avoid. But there are a lot of places you can go. One of the most, I'm going to go back, during the Second Intifada, there were a few Christians who showed up in Israel when nobody else was coming. Tourism was devastated like it has been today. And I remember speaking with one Israeli woman who said she encountered some Christians in the Shuk, which is the market, the famous market in Jerusalem, open market with all kinds of food goods, fresh stuff. Anyway, she said, "Why are you here?" And they said, "Well, we're here because God told us to be here. We are here to stand with you and let you know that we love you and we're with you." And she began to weep. Israelis are deeply, deeply moved. They're not moved when tourists come. They're, okay, that's money, we need the money. Come in, now leave.
Yeah.
But when we come in now, in this kind of a situation, and they say, "Well, why are you here? Why did you come?" And we tell them, "Because we love you, we stand with you, we pray for you." And it reaches in and touches the heart here, unlike any other avenue, I think. It can be difficult to get into the heart of Israeli Jewish people, right? They're known for being prickly on the outside, but softies on the inside. Well, getting through that prickly barrier, you find the soft part, and when it is soft, it just is amazing, right? And this is an ability to penetrate that kind of prickly whatever it is, and come in and say, we're here because we care.
Why is it so difficult? I'm sorry. Why is it so difficult to get into the country right now? Because it seems like most
airlines have canceled flights. I don't think there are any major airlines right now flying in and out of Israel, except El Al.
Mm-hmm.
You can.
So I mean, like it seems like that's indicative of either they're nervous about flying in there, or they're trying to mitigate their losses by knowing that more travel's not going to happen because tourists are nervous. I can't tell if it's the airlines doing it or
it's both.
Worried they won't sell seats.
It works together. I mean, it's working together. I mean, if you're a business person and you're looking at the situation here, you don't want to put your planes at risk of being hit by a rocket. I mean, they shut down Ben Gurion on Sunday for a few hours.
Wow.
Because there was concern that the Hezbollah attack was going to include an attack on Ben Gurion Airport. One interesting thing about flying El Al, right now, of course, you will pay a little bit more, but all El Al planes are equipped with anti-missile technology.
Really? I didn't know
all of them. They're the only airline in the world that has this. And of course, on board, there are always undercover security people. So it is, I think, the safest airline you could fly in the world, any place. And if you're going to come on El Al. But yeah, there's a lot of solidarity tours coming here right now. Go on guided tours of, say, down near the Gaza border. They often have opportunities to help farmers harvest various crops, which is very, very important. You can actually go up north and be briefed by IDF people. And of course, there are things you can do, a lot of things you can do without any problem at all in Jerusalem and all the way over to Tel Aviv. So yes, tourism has been drastically hurt here, but there's an opportunity in that, I think, for us.
Yeah, I think that the formal tourist industry of Israel is going to wait a little while. But I totally agree with Brian. You can take a smaller group over there and do a lot of good, helping in different areas. It means a lot to them. When you're in Israel, you feel safe. You just do. It's just there. Every time I go over there, we were in Tiberias 2 years ago. And my wife, Karen, and assistant Shelley, they were going down to the market, which was about a half-mile walk from our hotel. Right. And they said to our tour guide, they said, "Are we safe walking down there?" He said, "This isn't the United States."
Right.
He said, he said, "This isn't the United States. No one's going to shoot you." He said, "Walk down there, you're safe."
And the funny thing is, people in the United States think that it's more dangerous to come here.
Yeah.
Than it is of course, the U.S. is a big, big country, and there are many, many areas that are completely safe. But in almost any major city now, there are more people being killed
Absolutely.
every month in various murders and whatever than happen in Israel in a year. And also,
the Israeli military is very present. You see them all over the place. So they're there and they have their guns on.
well, they're IDF reserve soldiers who are serving, maybe they're not on duty. They always have to carry their rifles with them. They can't be loaded. I mean, they carry bullets on the side, but you'll see them everywhere. You'll see very, very attractive young men and women with with these guns on them, right? And it's everywhere you go.
Yeah.
It's a very, actually, some people come here and they're alarmed by the sight. I'm comforted by it.
I'm comforted. I want the good guys to have guns.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Here they do.
Okay, well, Jimmy, thanks for joining us this morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Brian.
It's great to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brian, great update this week as well. Great report yesterday. My dad's gonna be back on next week, right? You're back in the studio next week. Yeah,
Lee Cummings is on today with a special guest from Israel.
I know him. Yeah, I saw it. I've already seen it. Abner Bosky.
Yes, and very, very interesting conversation. And I'll be on next week with Rick Renner. Rick Renner has written another book. He's a phenomenal author, Greek scholar. He's written a book on the end times. I'll be interviewing him. So
Great.
All right. Well, we have the Tipping Point Conference coming up soon, too. Jimmy, you'll be there speaking along with a bunch of others. And I hope everyone out there checks out the conference. The schedule's on our website. Go to conference.endtimes.com. And you boys have a great day. Have a great night, Brian, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Shalom.
Shalom.